Well, let's try one now that you and Earl did an awful lot of recording on. I guess it's one of my favorites of the breakdowns, the Flint Hill Special. Do you remember that one, Josh?
Yeah, I hope I do. You know, Scruggs got tuners on that, and I ain't got nothing but this bar, and
That's
I'll try
right.
to do some of the licks that he...
Somehow you managed to get the effect in there, though, Josh.
I'll sure try it, Bob.
All right. Right. Now that one used a lot of rocking back and forth on the third and fourth string with that bar, and that's a little technique that we'll be taking a look at in the tablature. The rest of it was pretty much licks that we've done on previous songs, just tied together to make the Flint Hill Special. Josh, could you slow that down for us a little bit and maybe give us a little short, slow version of the Flint Hill Special? Thank you, Josh. And now we'll take a look at our tablature and start playing this song, the Flint Hill Special. Okay, this tune in the key of G starts off with a little intro, and the tablature will show you how to play it, but just for the timing purposes, it should sound like slowly. Now looking at the second line, tablature will also show you which notes to play and how to play them. It should sound like... The third line would sound like... Then we go back and we play that the second line again. Then we go down to the fourth line, and it would sound like... The fifth line would sound like... And then the little ending line would sound like... Well, this next one coming up is another one from the Carnegie Hall trip, one from that album. It's the break that Josh took on the Footprints in the Snow, which of course is an old Monroe tune. So this is it, Footprints in the Snow in C. And now we'll do the Footprints in the Snow slowly, and then we'll get into our tablature and break it down. Footprints in the Snow is in the key of C, and as you can tell, we're moving along a little more rapidly. I'm depending on you to learn the notes from your tablature and apply that to the sound that you're hearing in order to cover as much material as possible, and we have a great deal to cover. We'll be moving along in this fashion now. If you've listened to the first 2 or 3 tapes, you're familiar with how the tablature ties in with actually playing the dobro. Footprints in the Snow is in the key of C, which means we're playing basically out of the 5th fret. And the first line, and let me warn you, that first line has several slants in it, and it's going to take some time to get those slants just right. But it starts off and it sounds like. Once again. Then the second line is some hammer-ons and some slides like we've done before, and it would sound like. Once again, the second line. The third line would sound like. Once again, the third line. Fourth line starts off with a grace note at the 10th fret. The 5th line starts off on the 5th fret with a grace note. Once again, the fifth line. Then the last line would sound like once again, the last line. Well, Josh, another waltz you do that I've always enjoyed is the Starlight Waltz, and that's a tune, I guess it's been around, well, I guess it was invented even before bluegrass, wasn't it?
I'm sure it was. I found it in Wisconsin. I heard a boy play it, and I took it home. I loved it so well, and I thought it was a new tune. And my wife reads the notes, and she played it on the piano for me. She said, that's an old Strauss tune come out of the piano book called Starlight Waltz. But I love it.
Well, it sure is pretty on the dobro, and we'll hear the Starlight Waltz now. Okay, Josh, if you'll play the slow version now for us of the Starlight Waltz, then we'll take a look at it in our tab here and start learning to play it ourselves. The Starlight Waltz in the key of G starts off, the first line is a group of single notes, and it would start off sounding like again. The second line, another group of single notes with a little fill at the end, would sound like once again. The third line sounds like the fourth line. Now the fifth line is a group of single or double notes. Starting at the third fret, it would go like there's that little slant there. Once again. The fifth line once again. The sixth line. The seventh line, another series of two-string chords. Then the eighth line. Now the ninth line is going to be a little bit trickier. It's going to require a lot of moving of the bar. But once again, it is single notes, and it would sound like and now we would go back and play the second line, which sounded like then we would play the ninth line again. Once again, that's that tricky little line, and it goes. And then we would play the fourth line, which goes.
Here's a tune that I did back in the early 60s, or I guess it was the 60s, with Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. It done real well for us, called Foggy Mountain Rock, and me and Earl Scruggs wrote this thing one night in a little schoolhouse up in East Tennessee. Was working, and it had tornado warnings out, so we had to get rid of this one quick. But I'd like to play it for you.
tune. I don't know. I think that may be one of my favorites of yours, John.
You know, that was a pretty big tune for us. It even played on the pop stations, and that
Oh, yeah.
surprised me, you know,
Yeah.
back in those days.
Well, Foggy Mountain Rock, you know. You want to play that for us now, one time slow, and we'll get into our tablature. Foggy Mountain Rock in the key of G. This is kind of a fun little tune. It follows more or less rock progression of chords, or at least old-time rock. It's a real fun little tune, and you can do all sorts of things with it. We'll be working from Josh's slow version of it. Notice on page 2, down at the end of the tablature, there's a little legend down there that says A, A, B, B, C, A. Now you'll notice we have certain sections of this tune marked as A section, B section, and C section. So that legend would indicate you would play the A section twice, then you would play the B section twice, then play that little C section, and then back into an A section, and that would be one break on Foggy Mountain Rock. The first line, a series of single notes with one little backward roll on strings 3, 4, and 6 at the 5th fret. The first line would sound like once again very slowly. The second line, very similar, would sound like once again the second line. The third line, almost identical, except it starts off on the 6th string at the 5th fret, and it would sound like then the 5th line starts off at the 7th fret, and it would sound like and now we would go back and we would play, that is the entire section A. We would play that all over one more time, and then we'd go to section B. And section B goes, starts off with the last line on the first page, and it sounds like a little fill at the end there is just a little walk up with the thumb and picking the 3rd string each time in between. Sounds like. Once again, the first line in section B are the last line of the first page. Then the second line of section B, or the first line of page 2, would go. The fill, once again, is just like the one on the first part of B, section B, except that the strings are open this time. Once again, the first line of page 2, or the second line of section B. Section C, oh, by the way, you go back and play section B all over again, And then we start with section C, which would sound like once again. More quickly, that would sound like. And that's section C. And now you'd go back and play section A. And that little ending there is just after you've played section A, you just walk back up on the first string. You'd play the first string open, fret it, borrow it at fret 2 and borrow it at fret 4. Then play the third string open. Or you could borrow the fourth string at the 3rd fret and play the first 3 strings open. 1, 2, and 3 will be open, and start it at the 4th string and just rake across, which gives you that little 7th chord. Or Josh, another of the tunes that you did with Earl Scruggs, Earl's Breakdown. We're going to try that, and we're going to put a banjo on the front of this thing, and we're going to study a little bit of your backup licks on this thing. So this is Earl's Breakdown. All right, Josh, if you'll play it through slowly one time for us, and then we'll get into our tablature and start learning that song. breakdown in the key of G, of course written by the famous Earl Scruggs, who Josh worked with for many, many years, and just a super banjo picker. You'll notice we have 4 sheets of tablature for this song, and you'll notice every other line is numbered with great big old numbers that you just can't hardly miss. Those numbered lines are the break that Josh took on his slow version, and that'll be the break we'll be learning. The lines below that, which are marked backup, have to do with the backup licks that Josh played on the quicker version, where the banjo was taking the lead and the dobro was just doing some backup licks. And we'll be covering that, the backup portion, later on in this tape. However, right now we want to concentrate on the numbered lines. The first line is there's a lick in there that's just a Josh Graves trademark lick, and we want to work on that one, and we'll be using that lick several times in this song and in future songs too. The first line starts off with that first 2 notes on the 4th string, and we borrow the 4th string at the 2nd fret and play it once. Then we open that string, play it open and hammer on it 2, and then we play the 3rd string open. Now that's a familiar little lick, we've done that before, but once again it would sound like. And now we go into that lick I was talking about, where we slide on the 3rd string from 2 to 3. We're just suggesting a slide there. And we continue a forward roll, the index finger picking the 2nd string open. Then the middle finger would pick the 1st string open with a hammer on it 2, followed by pull off, which would sound like. Then we do sort of a backward roll where the index finger catches the 2nd string open again. Then the 3rd string is played with the thumb sliding from the 4th fret to the 2nd fret. So that lick would sound like. So up to that point, the first line would sound like. Then the next 3 notes are just simply. So the entire first line would sound like. Then the second line would sound like. The little fill there in parentheses is just a sort of a combination of a forward and a back roll. The strings are all open. We pick the 3rd string, the 1st string, then the 2nd string, and it would sound like. So the second line again would sound like. The 3rd line starts off with that lick again. Then it would sound like. Just that. Then we go up and catch the 3rd string at the 2nd fret, play it twice. Then we do a backward roll on 1, 2, and 4, moving our bar down to catch the 4th string at the 4th fret, and that little roll would sound like. Then run up and catch the 3rd string at the 2nd fret. So that would sound like. And the fill, you'll notice it's the tilted bar position. The 3rd string is barred at the 2nd fret, and it's just a forward roll on 4, 3, and 1, and it would sound like. So the entire third line would sound like the fourth line would sound like the fifth line would sound like the sixth line is just a follow-up of that, the finish of that fifth line, and it just goes. The seventh line, here we're going into the song again. We just finished the first little round of it, and now we're going to start it over. It's almost like the first time through, except for a different little front lick. And the seventh line would sound like. Now the eighth line would sound like. Then the ninth line, we go into that lick again. Then the 10th line would sound like. And then the ending line, that 11th line, is one we've done before. Okay, we're going to attempt something now that, as far as I know, has never been done before. We're going to try to break down Josh's backup licks and try to sort of itemize those as best we can. The backup licks that you see in your tablature below the lines, which are the Dobro break that Josh took, this backup is taken from the. Remember back at the first of this tape when the banjo took the first break and Josh was just doing some backup licks behind him? Well, that's where that this tablature is from, and that's where these backup licks are from, that first time through. So now the first line, when Josh was doing that, that first lick there, while the banjo was doing that, Josh followed through, mainly just going through the chords, and the first thing he did, he played a couple of just percussive notes that would sound like. Now what I'm doing there, I have my bar at the 12th fret laid down, and I'm picking sort of a pinching motion with my middle finger on the 3rd string, my index finger on the 4th string, and my thumb on the 5th string. And as I pick, it's sort of a pinching motion, I lift the bar and mute it, which gives it sort of a little punch. So while the banjo was doing that first line, which would be the first 2 lines in our tablature, Josh played a lick similar to this. Now I'll show you how that fits into the tune with a little banjo. notice that last note comes right about at the, well, it sustains right on through until he starts his second part. And just a word about that, that little percussive lick. That's used sort of on the backbeat of the tune, very much like a mandolin chop, where the bass is usually just hitting the upbeat or the on beat. The chop we use is trying to catch the off beat or the backbeat. So the bass would go boom, and we would go our little lick, and just opposite of the bass. At any rate, moving on to the second line, we were sustaining in that at the 12th fret position with that note, and he simply, while the banjo is doing well, the part where the dobro goes, or something like that. All he's going to do is just slide from 4 to 5 on 2 and 4 strings, and then slide from 5 to 7. So we'll hear that now with the banjo. Now the fourth line, where the banjo would do something that, well, the dobro does something that sounds kind of like. Instead of, it's very much like the first 2 lines of the song. What Josh did for a backup there, you'll see in your tab, he slides from 10 to 12. Sorry. Once again, that would sound like. Now with the banjo. Now down to the 5th and 6th line, which would be the banjo playing the equivalent of the dobro doing the it just kind of finishes up that that portion of the tune. And what Josh is doing there, he starts off again with that same lick that we did on the previous passage. Then he dropped down to the 7th fret and did. Then he did that. So that would sound like. That may have been a little fast. Let me do it a little slower. Now with the banjo. Moving to the 7th line now, which would be the equivalent of the dobro playing this line. The backup, Josh starts at the 9th fret on the 4th string and slides up to 12. Then just does a forward roll once again. Drops down and slides from 3 to 5 on the 5th string. And then back up to the 12th fret, sliding from 10 to 12 on the 4th and, or excuse me, the 5th and 3rd strings. So that would sound like. Now with the banjo. The 8th line now, which would be the equivalent of the dobro playing. What Josh is doing there, he's starting off his backup with a little grace note at 12, walking to 10, and going down to 5. Once again. So now let's put that with the banjo. The ninth line now is very similar to the 2 lines we've done before. Josh starts off by playing 2 and 4 at the 12th fret, walks it down to 10, slides it back up to 12. Goes down to 5 and walks up on 2 strings at a time. And then up to 12, sliding from 10 to 12. So that would sound like. Now with the banjo. The 10th line, the dobro equivalent of that line would go. Or thereabouts. At any rate, that's probably got the most notes in it, most licks in it for backup licks. But Josh starts off with a slide from 10 to 12 on the 4th string, followed by a backward roll on 2, 3, 4. And then he picks the 2nd string, the 4th string again, then does a backward roll on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd strings. So that so far that would sound like. Then he just simply takes his thumb and runs it across the top 4 strings on the 7th fret. Then he plays the 3rd string open, and you'll recognize that lick as one we've done before. So the whole thing would sound like. So with the banjo. Now, so that you can practice these licks and others you may develop by listening to the front of this tape, we're going to put the banjo on playing Earl's breakdown very slowly, and that'll be the end of this tape, and you can practice along with it your backup licks.